la familia, and welcome to another episode of Fire and Butterflies, where vulnerability meets authenticity, where courage meets love, and where fire meets butterflies. And I am your host, Comadre Cristal, and I am really happy to be here today. I had to take a little break away from my podcasting. Well, it was like literally a week break, so it wasn't that much of a break. Um, just because there was a lot happening and I I just had a lot of great opportunities of reflection. And what came out of that is what I want to really talk about today in this episode. This episode, we're going to be talking about journaling and how it really is helpful, as much as I myself, many times in my life, challenged the idea of journaling. Um, I'm going to be here talking about journaling and the tips and the benefits, and maybe some things that can help on your own healing journey. So, yes, stay and hang out with me because that's what we're going to be talking about today. So, journaling. Yeah. I never was a big journaling person. I tried, and don't get me wrong, I've tried multiple times in my life. I've tried since I was a little girl. I remember when I was a little girl, I wanted to have a diary. I did have a diary, actually, not that I wanted. I've always wanted to have a diary, and when I would get a diary, I never really kept up with my diary. But I remember my first diary was a little, it was like a little pink little diary, and it had like a little lock to it. And it was just so cool. It was so cool to be able to have something that I could just talk about what was going on in my life at that time. What I didn't realize was that how much it did help me to have something to just release my feelings, release whatever I was experiencing, release the pain. And and I think that's why I didn't keep up with it. I think I didn't keep up with it because I almost felt like if I did, I would have to relive it. And one of my coping skills was I didn't want to relive. I wanted to forget. I didn't want to. Yeah, it's almost like I wanted to, if I didn't speak into it or if I didn't write it down, it didn't happen. And so that's why I never really kept up with journaling. It honestly felt more like a chore than it did a method of releasing or a method of just taking care of my own well-being, my especially my mental well-being. And so, yeah, journaling just was not my thing. When I was a teenager, definitely not my thing. Not, yeah, it was not my thing during teenage years. My college years, no, even the thought of journaling, that for sure was a big no for me. Because especially, for those of my loyal listeners that have been following since the first episode, I've that's when I started therapy. I started therapy in my early 20s, right after my dad passed, and I started going to therapy at the school because they provide therapy for the students. And I remember that was like one of the first times that a therapist suggested journaling, well, that was the first time that they suggested a lot of things that I would do. And I was just like, I don't understand why. Like, how is this going to help me? And so journaling was one of the suggestions that were given to me. And I didn't understand how could me writing on a piece of paper or in a notebook do anything or change anything. Because I think for me, I had this really closed mind in regards to the in order for my problems to go away or in order for my life to get better, there needs to be like an action behind it. It's almost like this false idea that we have about just a quick fix kind of idea, I think is what I struggled with, especially because I wanted a quick fix. I didn't want to feel the depression anymore. I didn't want to feel the suicidal ideations. I didn't want to feel unwanted. I didn't want to feel unlovable. I didn't want to feel a lot of those icky feelings that I had been holding on to my whole life. And I didn't understand how journaling was going to do that for me, because if if I wrote it on paper, it almost felt like that was gonna make it more real, instead of if it was just in my head. And so, yeah, I every time the therapist was suggested, I wouldn't. I just wouldn't. I wouldn't. I was just like, "No, I'm not gonna do it." Um, along with and I will be very, very vulnerable with all of you, along with a lot of other suggestions that the therapist gave me in the beginning of my journey. I didn't do a lot of them. And so that was like really like that's like kind of like the backstory of journaling for me. Like I never understood it. I just understood this idea of you get a notebook, you get paper, and you just write it out. Right, right, right. I never really understood the different types of journaling, the different ways to journal, and now that I've experienced life since my early 20s, I've had quite a life, and I'm not even that much older. Um, yeah, I've learned that there's all kinds of ways to journal. There is no one way of like there's no one method to journaling. So I'm going to share a little bit of the journaling methods I use, along with like the benefits that I've seen once I started doing it. And the secret to all of it is consistency, and how I've seen the difference when I am more consistent versus here and there, and dabbing here and there a little bit. So I really was reintroduced. I would say reintroduced. I was reintroduced to the idea of journaling again, um, after a major breakup that I had had in my 20s. Um, gosh, yeah, this was a very long time ago. This was an ex uh, fiance, actually. Huh. Okay, so ex fiance. Um, when I broke up with him, I fell into this very back into a deep depression. Um, and it this depression didn't scare me the way the depression I experienced with my dad's, like the grief kind of that's what I mean by depression, like the grief of it. Um, the grief of my dad's death was definitely a very, very, very pivotal point for me. This one, okay, so I already knew about these tools. I already had an idea. So it didn't I didn't let it get to that point. Like I immediately was like, I need help. I need to do something. And so that's why I didn't get to that point again. So when this breakup happened, I fell into my own depression because of self-blame. My self-esteem was down. I, yeah, that those codependency behaviors that I had picked up as a child were really affecting me in my 20 it affected me in my adult life. I just didn't understand that it was at that point looking back, because at that point I truly felt like it was my fault. Like I wasn't good enough. Why couldn't I have been a good enough girlfriend? What why was I not, it's all of those negative comments that we make about ourselves. Why am I not pretty enough? Why am I not skinny enough? Why am I not smart enough? Why am I not funny enough? Like it's the constant why are we not enough? Um, and this reminds me of another episode I talked about a few weeks ago, or not at this point, months ago, the imposter syndrome of not feeling enough. So the imposter again, remember, imposter syndrome has been in my life for quite some time. So when this breakup happened, I knew I wasn't wanting to go. I needed to go back to therapy because I just couldn't seem to get out of this grief of this loss of this relationship, and I kept blaming myself. So I started going to therapy. And again, my at this point I couldn't sleep at night. I struggled sleeping. I struggled um getting out of my head. I just yeah, I struggled. And so the therapist had suggested that at night before I go to bed, especially on the nights where I couldn't sleep because I was like just up all night or thinking nonstop. She suggested that I journal. Just and she didn't tell me, like, it was so funny because she didn't call it journaling. What she told me was, she said, Crystal, get a get a notebook and just write out your feelings. Write about what it is that you're feeling, what it is that you're thinking about. Just get it out of your head and onto paper. And I was like, "What? Okay, sure." Um, I didn't do it. Because again, I didn't like I was the kind of person that if I didn't think it was going to work, I wasn't going to waste my time with it. That's just how I think, and to this day I still kind of think like that. Um and so I didn't. So when I went back to another session, was honest and I said, "No, I didn't do it. I just can't seem to get it into it. I just don't I don't understand how to I don't understand how to write this." So then she said, "Okay, that's okay. How about you try something else?" Because again, my depression was so low. I mean, I don't know for a lot of people how like your everyone's different processes, but every time before a session, my therapist would have me do a questionnaire just to assess where I was on my levels. Um, and I was always very low. Like my numbers were very high, being like that was high risk. Because I didn't have any. I was like I was really down on myself. And so she then started asking me about if I practiced daily gratitudes. And I said, no. And she goes, well, maybe that's a approach you can take. She said, um, every day, doesn't matter what time of the day, doesn't matter if it's in the morning, doesn't matter if it's at night, doesn't matter if it's like during the middle of the day, just every day, any time of the day, write down three things that you are grateful for. And then she still went further because I've never had really a good poker face, so I think she saw my face and she goes, and it could be anything. Like, it doesn't have to be this grand scheme of things of, like, what you're grateful for. It could be and I remember her example, she's like, "You can even write, like, you're grateful for toilet paper." And I go, toilet paper?" And she goes, "Yeah, like, that's something you can be grateful for." Because even when she asked me in that moment, she's like, "Well, what are you grateful for?" Familia. I struggled with answering that question. I struggled with answering a question of what am I grateful for? It was really hard. Like, that's how much in my dark hole I was in that I couldn't even think of what I was grateful for. And so when she said toilet paper, I go, "Well, that's so weird, but sure, why not?" And so I having, like, a prompt, like, like, having something to actually, like, talk about kinda made it easier for me. It was easier for me to get my feet wet and to really understand a structure when it came to, just writing something on a piece of paper or, AKA journaling. So I did. I did every day. I would just randomly do three things I was grateful for. And because I am who I am, I always procrastinated. So I definitely always did it at late at night before I had to go to bed because I would be like, "Oh shit, I didn't do my journal for today." And so there I am cramming before I go to bed. Um, but I wanted to be consistent with this because it did make sense and it helped, like, because then I started to realize that there like I could be grateful for the stupidest things in the world that I never really thought I could be grateful for, and I could be. And then it just started to really help and start making a difference. And that was it. That was my experience with my, like, introduction to journaling where I actually kept up with it. And then I stopped, and then I didn't do it again. And, you know, it's that, uh it's like when we start to feel better, we don't do more. That was me. Like, it's like, "Oh, I'm doing better now. I don't have to do all this anymore." And so, life goes on and I'm doing my life thing again. And I got reintroduced to journaling once again about 3 years ago. Yeah, God, 3 years. It's crazy how time flies. But anyway, so about 3 years ago, I I was reintroduced to journaling because that was when another place in my life where I just felt everything when my life was just falling apart. I didn't understand, and I wanted to control things. I wanted to control people. um, and I was reintroduced to journaling, but this time it was a different kind of journaling. It was actually a journaling that, you know, it's called prompt journaling, where it really is like you have a question every day and you just write about that question and whatever it is. And and that's when I started to really understand that journaling was really this, I mean, it's for me. I don't know if this is the fact for it. I genuinely don't know if this is how people feel about it. But for me, it became a conduit to remove and to, like, get the stuff out of my body. Because by this point, I had already been working in the field of, domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking for by this point, I had already been in the field for about 6, 7 years. So I I understood how trauma stayed in our body. I had been doing research by this point for my own, like, quirky benefits of my own, like, this is pretty cool stuff to learn. And it really did, I did understand this, being trauma informed and working with clients, really understanding that, especially because the agency I worked in, we had a client centered approach. Like, all our services were really geared around empowering our clients. Um, and that's how I like. It's just so funny how life is so beautiful that that's how I run my business as well. So I learned a lot about trauma, and in those 7 years, I learned a lot about how really trauma is stored in our body and how it does stay in our body. There's a really good book that I read during this time, and I actually saying it out loud, it's telling me, like, maybe it's time to reintroduce myself to reread this book because now I have a different mindset too. But anyways, and the name of the book is The Body Keeps a Score. Good book. So if you haven't read it all, go read it. It's a really good book. It's not like it's a good book. So Body Keeps a Score it's a great book because it really talks about how our traumas really do get stored in our body and how our body is keeping those scores. By that point, I had also learned about the ACE scores, the adverse childhood ACE. Um, I'm drawing a blank. So I will make sure to put this all in the description. But so combining all of this and putting all this together, I really did understand how I myself had I was at a high risk of a lot of things. A lot of things. I was at high risk of not just a lot of things of, like, toxic patterns and repeating toxic patterns, but also, like, a high risk of my own health. Like, I had a high risk for early heart disease. I had a high risk for diabetes. I there was just a lot of high risks according to the science and according to all of these things that I was reading about, and how the traumas affect us, and the cortisols in our that's stored in our body. it was mind blowing for me because I was just like, what's going on? And so knowing all of this knowledge and then being reintroduced to journaling really gave me this opportunity to really take journaling and harness it as a way of getting my traumas, getting my emotions, getting the things that have been stored in my body, getting them out. And so I started to see that because a lot of the prompts that I would answer really got me thinking. And immediately for a lot of the questions, especially journaling, I remember when I started doing this method, my who was I working at this? I can't remember if it was a mentor. I think it was my mentor. It wasn't a therapist. Well, it was a therapist, but not my therapist. My mentor is a therapist, so it wasn't like, you know what I'm trying to say. They were not my therapist, but they were a therapist and they were my mentor. So my mentor had encouraged me to just like not to overthink it. Like I remember the suggestion was don't overthink it. Just whatever comes up. And if and if the answer is a one word answer, let that be. You don't have to come up with this like extravagant long 4, 5, 6, 7 page entry. Like just whatever comes out. And that's exactly what it was in the very beginning because I hadn't developed that muscle of connecting with this subconscious part of us that we all have. I didn't know how to connect to it deeply when it came to journaling. I could connect to it when I was doing my tarot readings and I could connect to it when I was doing, a lot of other spiritual beliefs and rituals. I just could not connect to it when I was journaling. And so in the beginning it was hard. Oh, I would have a prompt and I just didn't want to write and I would just put it was okay or yes, no. Um but consistency. And so I kept going. I kept doing it. I kept pushing myself. And so then I started to realize this journaling isn't like I like it, but it's not for me. Like sometimes some of these questions I'm not sure if I'm ready for because a lot of the questions I just wasn't ready for them either. A lot of the questions that I would get in prompts, like I just wasn't ready to deal with. I just wasn't deal I'm ready to deal with those answers that were going to come out. So that's what made it really hard. And so then my mentor had suggested that I do stream consciousness writing. And I was like, tell me more because this is exciting things. I've never understood that. And so that kind of style of journaling is really interesting to me because that one is you just no prompt, nothing. You just look at the paper and you just let it flow. Again, wasn't easy in the beginning. It was really hard. However, that kind of like that amount of freedom was nice for me because I'm not the kind of again my personality the type of person I am. I don't like being contained, and so it was nice to just have that kind of freedom to just journal and just let it out. And so that was my style. I just wanted to tap into my subconscious and just like get it out, get it out, get it out. And I don't know what I was writing about sometimes. Sometimes I had no idea what it was coming out. I just was getting it out of my body. And and so that was nice. However, I would then sometimes try to make sense of what I just said, and then I would go back and then I would criticize my own writing. I would criticize my spelling. I would criticize I was again super hyper critical of myself. And so then I go back and I go, okay, what other style of journaling's out there? Because now this style of journaling, I am also being like harsh on myself. Um, that need of perfection. So then I was introduced to another type of journaling style, and this one stuck. And I mean, it stuck to this day that I still use it, kind of stuck. So this one, it's letter writing, and it's letter writing in a very beautiful way because it's letter writing that the person or thing or situation that I am writing the letter to, they will never read it. Um, so much so that I don't even get to read it. Because this part of letter writing is I write out whatever it is that I need to write out and whatever I need to release or whatever is happening. Again, there's no prompt to it. There's that freedom of it. Um, and then once I'm done writing it, I burn it. And that is a method of I have started to use as handing it over. Because during this journey in the last 3 years of reintroducing journaling into my life and being more consistent with it, by this point, I had obtained a sponsor in my 12-week recovery program, my 12-week, my 12-step week recovery program. And and in recovery, for those of you who have been in a recovery program or are familiar with it, there's a lot of talk of handing it over to spirit, handing it over to God, higher power, whatever you identify and you believe in. And the idea of me handing it over just didn't make sense to me. Um, until I started talking to my sponsor about, like, I don't understand, like, what do you mean hand it over? And so they had suggested using the elements that because I'm a very spiritual person, but a very spiritual person when it comes to like connecting with nature and connecting with Mother Earth and connecting with like this source of energy around us. And so they suggested that I just burn the letters. Just as soon as I write it, burn it. Don't read it, don't look at it, just burn it and hand that over to spirit. Um, and so I started doing that. And it was very beautiful. Like I'm trying to remember the first time I did that. I actually the my first letter I wrote was to my dad. And I don't remember what the letter was about. And I think that's the point. Like it's that is the point of just getting out of your body. That way you don't have like you don't. Um it's not in your body anymore. So I don't even know what I wrote I honestly don't remember what I wrote to him about. Like I just remember writing I knew I needed to write a letter to my dad. I felt um cheated out of life of having a life with him. And so I wrote a letter to my dad and I remember as I was writing this letter, I remember just crying and just like putting all of my emotions and my like everything that I had stored in my heart, just like putting it like literally I felt myself like putting that energy into this letter. And I folded it up immediately. I didn't look at it. I didn't reread it. I just folded it up and I burned it. I went ahead and burned my letter. And I have a little like cauldron, so it's cute. And in this, I just burned it, and it as I watched it burn, like I felt this sense of weight being lifted, this sense of literally, oh, that's true. I even remember thinking that as I saw the smoke coming up, like I literally was just like, oh, and there goes the smoke, sending sending the message to wherever it needs to go. And and I liked it. I really enjoyed seeing God, my higher power, take my letter and 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 doing whatever it needed to be done after that. And so I started doing that. And so consistently I've been journaling in that kind of way especially now, I mean, I do very different types of journalings. I do all kinds of journaling, but this one I particularly do when I need to release or let go or forgive or um just get it out of my body and hand it over to spirit. Um, for those of you who go a lot with follow along with my YouTube channel, on my YouTube channel, I have two workshops a month, a full moon and a new moon workshop, and I always talk about handing it over after we're done. I encourage people to write out whatever they got to write out, get out, whatever they're going to manifest, whatever they're going to release, and then burn it or use one of the four elements or all four of the elements to get handing it over. And so I've been doing this for about 2 years now. Solid 2 years, and it's been beautiful. And the more consistency I saw with that, the more I started to see the results, because the results, they weren't like life-changing results. They were just results of, I just started to find this peace. I just started to find this breath of fresh air kind of feeling, and I liked it. And so I was like, okay, so if this can do this, like what if like I'm just more, I show up more consistently for myself on in when it comes to journaling and getting out of my body. And so then I went back and started trying to figure out what kind of other journaling prompts I enjoy, or what kind of journaling styles I like. And I always kept coming back to the stream of consciousness journaling, like the going back to the, I just need to get it out of my body, whatever it is I need to write. However, I needed it to be a little bit more structured, because I also because I don't like being contained, but I like structure. As long as that's not an oxymoron, because it does sound like an oxymoron right there. But I that's what I enjoyed. I enjoyed. It does sound very contradicting now that I say it. Like, now that I'm thinking about it, like, yeah, that does sound contradicting. But anyways, I needed some sort of structure. I didn't want it to be a strict structure. I just needed some sort of like ability to have wiggle room and do my own thing, but not so stringent. So I then started to just have a journal by my bed, because I remembered going back to my therapy times where my therapist had encouraged and recommended that I journal when I cannot sleep. And so that's what I started doing. I just started journaling when I couldn't sleep. I just started, just getting out of my body. What am I thinking? What's going on? What am I worried about? What's going on? What's going on? What's going on? And so that was really nice, because what I started to realize and started to see was that once I like really poured it out onto this piece of paper, I could go to sleep. Like, it was like my thoughts were quieting down, and I could go to sleep, and I none of my problems went away, but it there was this sense of, okay, like, it's out. Now let's go to bed. And so that's like the one of the methods that I have really enjoyed, is being able to have a journal. So I have a journal for everything now. Because then back to the stream consciousness, my issue is that I also sometimes have so many thoughts, and a lot of these thoughts are great ideas, and then if I don't write them down, I will forget, because my brain is constant. Like, I'm always thinking, like, I'm always analyzing. My brain never stops. So I have journals everywhere now. I have journals on my phone. I have journals in person. I have journals on my desk. I have journals on my bed. I have journals everywhere. And each journal is actually for a different purpose. And that's been really cool. One of the methods that I have recently, and within the last couple months, have reintroduced into my life, because again, I remember it made a difference at one point in my life, and again, consistency is key to success, and consistency is key to healing. I wanted to bring in daily gratitude journaling again. However, I wanted to do this a little different, because part of my healing journey has really taken off, thanks to a deeper relationship that I have with my spirit team and with my own higher power. And so once I started having like a daily gratitude journal, and again, combining the letter writing that I still, because I'm telling you, letter writing is my thing. I don't know what it is about writing to someone or something. It just, it's so much nicer. It makes, I don't know. Maybe because I love to talk and I just pour it out there. So one of my journals that I have currently that I love and it's beautiful is I call it my prayer journal. And this is a journal that I write a letter every day to, or not just every day, anytime, but the goal is every day. However, it could be multiple times a day, especially if I need to pray. If I'm feeling a emotion that's too much for me to process, or I'm just like I'm going through it in my head or whatever's happening, I grab my journal and just put it out on paper. Like this is what I'm going through. Da 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 da. Um, but I wanted to make it a gratitude journal because I also really wanted to take moment to step back and pay and be more present, be more in the present moment, because that's what life is all about. It's about living in the present moment. We can go back to our past. We can go into our future, but there's nothing we can do about it. The past is the past. It's done and it's over with. The future, we have no idea how it's going to work out. All we have control over is our present moment. And so I really wanted to incorporate more gratitude in my daily life. And so every day now I write a letter to my higher power and I start off, dear uh goddess and da 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 da, and I just go on and on and on and on and about my day and like what were the blessings and what were the struggles and and my stream consciousness journaling will kick in at times. Like sometimes I just next thing I know I look over and I'm like, holy shit. I had a lot to get out. And there's times where I write, like, I'm like, today was not a really good day, and I really don't want to talk about it, but I just wanted to write in here to say thank you. Thank you for everything that you've done for me today. Even though it wasn't the greatest day, I still did feel your presence and your love. That's it. So so that has really been helping me. And I really do see a difference in my life since I started journaling. I do see a difference. Well, no, not since I started journaling. Since I've started journaling consistently. Because like I said, journaling has been in and out of my life for quite some time, but when I do it consistently, I do see a difference. And there's also this beauty is that if I miss a day, it's not gonna be the end of the world. It's not like I'm gonna disappoint anyone. Like, it is what it is, and also just accepting that I don't have to be like, I don't. This journaling is not for someone. It's for me, and I just got to show up for me. And so it's been really nice because this has also given me an opportunity to just show myself how much I love myself and show myself the love and appreciation that I have for myself. And so that's been beautiful. So it has definitely also helped in my self-love, my self-discovery. It's also helped in my creativity. Not too long ago, my business coach, the ones from a few episodes that you all got to meet, Haley, phenomenal, phenomenal coach to work with. If you all haven't, like, she's phenomenal. Well, she had suggested that I start doing this journaling prompt because, to get my creativity wheels going. And I've started doing it and I've done it and I'm just like, wow. Like my imagination is wild because there was also that point in my life, at one point in my life, I lost my imagination. I used to be very imaginative. I don't know. I hope you all know what I'm trying to say. I was a very imaginative child. I used to be a kid who loved I just loved imagining. I loved playing house. I loved playing like just make believe. Like that was my jam. And I can't remember when or how it stopped, but it did. And I lost connection to my imagination. I lost connection to that part of me. And so since I started working with Haley, she's always encouraging me to use my creative muscle because it's a muscle and be more creative. And so I'm doing that, a lot of that through journaling. Um, for a lot of other people that she's worked with, and she suggested it too. I'm not there yet, and I do hope to be there one day. Art journaling, just journal with art. Just grab a piece of paper and pens and paper and color color markers and color pencils and crayons or whatever it is, and just color. Just get it out of your body. And like again, it doesn't have to be structured. It doesn't have to be. It could be just intuitive art, or if you want, get a coloring book and journal as you're coloring, think about these things. um because the one thing that I want everyone to understand when it comes to journaling, and this is what I've learned, is that journaling is a beautiful way of getting our mind to quiet down. It's very similar to meditation. When you're meditating and you're just quieting your mind and you're just being in that stillness. But journaling really does give that opportunity for you to still your mind, and then to also just release whatever thoughts cannot keep your mind from overgoing. Because I that was like one of the it's funny now that I say this, because that's one of the correlations I started to notice, was the more I journaled, the easier meditation would get for me. Because in early stages of me starting to meditate, again, 3 years ago, when journaling was reintroduced into my life, meditation was also introduced into my life. Um, and it just I could not meditate. I couldn't. Like I couldn't even sit still for like 5 minutes. Like even just to focus on my breath, like my breathing, like I would then overthink it. It was really bad. But journaling really got me to just get those thoughts out of my mind, to quiet my mind enough that I it was easier to meditate. So anything that you can find to just get your thoughts and your mind out of your body is really a nice way of journaling. Recently, another not this actually hasn't been recently. One of the methods that I didn't even know was journaling. I genuinely did not know it was journaling, and I had been doing it for quite some time. Was just voice notes and recordings, and just the it's so funny, like those recorders that people you would see with a recorder, like recording and da 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 da, and then you stop recording. Like, I had been doing that for some time, because it was easy. Again, I had a thought and I was like, "I don't wanna forget this, let me put it into my phone," and then I forget about the note. But I started doing that again not too long ago, and it was really nice to just be able to get it out of my body and go back and re-listen and be like, "Whoa." Especially because when we say things out loud that are in our heads, there's this part of us that hears it and goes, "Did you just say that? Do you really believe that?" And then it's just like, "Oh gosh, like we need to do something about this." Um and so that has been another method of journaling that I really encourage, that a lot of people don't really think about, is just honestly, the secret of journaling is get it out of your body. Get it out of your body. If it's writing it on paper, there is something magical about writing it down. I don't know what it is. It's beautiful, but as long as you speak it out loud, say it out loud, that can definitely be a method of journaling. Um, what else is another method that I can think about right now that has really helped me when it comes to journaling? Yeah, those are really it. I mean, right now, having my daily prayer journal has been really, it's been beautiful, and they're prayers, and I think that's just, even having that kind of idea of a prayer is just really beautiful, and knowing that my prayers are getting answered, and having this faith that they're getting answered. It's really beautiful. And so, yeah, journaling, give it a try. You know, I I know it's not easy for a lot of people. I know that just to sit down, especially when you have a million and one problems and a million and one things to do. Um, However, what I do want to share with everyone is, take some time for you. 5 minutes, if even if that's 5 minutes that you have to spare, take it for you. Um, Even if even if it's when you go to the bathroom, if that's your only quiet time, because early on when I first became a parent, that was literally the only quiet time I had. And even then, it wasn't even that quiet. I remember, I think I have a picture of it somewhere in my phone. My little girl would put her fingers under my door. I'm like, "Mommy," I'd be like, "Oh my gosh, like, can mommy just go to the bathroom in peace?" Oh, those days are long gone. I love my babies. But anyways, so whatever time, just any time, and just put something down on paper or put something down on a text message or a phone call to not phone call, but a voice note. Like, even if it's just a little thing of I'm having a bad day, and just getting it out there, because if we continue to keep this in our bodies and continue to store this, it's not gonna it doesn't help us. It does not benefit us. And so I really want to encourage people to step out of their comfort zones when it comes to journaling. Find a method that works for you. There's so many methods out there, so many methods. Mindfulness journaling is coming up for me, is again very similar to gratitude, but this one is about just being more mindful of what your day was, what it looked like. There's journaling, there's manifestation journaling, where you just journal and you journal your future. You talk about what you like that's this is using your imagination of what it is that what does your life look like a year from now? What does everything look like? What do you dress? How you're like That's another method of journaling of for manifestations. But the letter one for me is my favorite. I love writing letters. I don't know what it is. Um, Actually, I love writing letters in general. I I miss that part of like my youth, was to write a letter and put a stamp on it and send it off to the post office and have a friend read a letter. Handwriting letters are a thing of the past, unfortunately. I hope not. Actually, I hope that there's some people who still handwrite letters to each other. Um, I want to handwrite letters to people. I'm going to do this now. I just had like this beautiful realization of, you know what? Maybe I should be the one also doing handwriting letters. Um, I'm gonna reach out to some friends to see if they want to do some handwriting letters with me. Cause yeah, I during my college years, I had a friend that we did go back and forth and rewrote handwritten letters to each other, and it was a great time, good memories. Especially the anticipation of getting their letter. I don't know, it's just different from nowadays where it's just a simple text message. But anyways, okay, that is my 2 cents about journaling. I really hope that it benefits all of you. Find what works for you. Find something that works and that benefits you. You may not like it, and that's okay. You don't have to like it. Don't force yourself to like it. Trust me, I did not like it for the longest time until I found a groove, until I found a way that worked for me. And now that I do it, I swear by it and I love it. And like I'm telling you, I have journals for everything. Um, but find what works for you. And the secret to all of it is always just find ways to get these thoughts, get these feelings, get these narratives, especially the negative ones, out of our body. Like, get them out, because if you don't get them out, if you keep them stuck in your head, it's like the hamster wheel. You're just going and going and going. So get it out of your body. Like, and find a method that will help you speak into it, write it out, whatever it is. Because that is like one of the beautiful ways of healing, is to just get it out of our body, and then it's it gets easier. I mean, I don't know if it gets easier, but it gets manageable. It gets manageable. But anyways, thank you all so much for being here today. I love you all. I missed being here. I do plan to be again on here more consistently. But yes, anyways, I love you all, and with all of that, I am sending you all so much fire and butterflies, and as always, don't forget, love your now. Bye.